Hello there and welcome to the Weather Studio Live. It's the 2nd of July, it's 1 p.m. It's Tuesday. I'm Claire Nazir.
And I'm Aidan McGivern. We're live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and you can send us your questions, send us your comments. We will try our best to answer them as much as possible. What a packed show though this week.
Yeah, what's coming up, Aidan?
It's all about the heat in Europe last week. How extraordinary was it? What records were broken? What about the heat in France? Really was quite staggering. How was the UK affected? And where's that heat gone now? Will it return?
Yes. So please send in your comments and questions. We've had some from last week, some already in from this week. It's Alex Deacon. He's standing by the wall of weather wisdom. Alex Deacon.
Weather wall of wisdom, wall of weather wisdom, whichever way it is.
Worth pointing out, it's just the wall that's wise, not the...
Wow, and you're sitting here next week. I will remind you of that, Mr. McGee. Yes, some great questions already coming in, already from today. Thank you very much for those. Nigel Clifford on YouTube. Why didn't Britain break the 35-degree temperature from last Saturday, considering that southern France had its all-time maximum record? That's a great question, and we will be answering that because there's quite a good explanation as to why we didn't break records last week. Kieran Wright on YouTube. Are we looking at a cold and dry July? We'll go into the first week of July's weather, won't we, in a bit of detail. Morgan Seward, it's his prom on Thursday night in southeast England. Will the weather be fine? It should be, actually. Morgan say it's looking fine, dry, right, quite warm by Thursday evening as well. You will need, those if you're wearing a tux. Yeah. Ooh, it's going to be yes, deodorant required. Thanks for that. That's for it for now. But do please keep sending your questions in. We'll answer as many as we can.
Okay, now this week in pictures across the world, we've seen some dramatic imagery, particularly in Mexico. Guadalajara saw an incredibly severe hailstorm on Sunday afternoon. It was a cold front which moved in from the north, very active feature, and it caused this, look at this, 3 feet of hail. Now the hail wasn't particularly big, but there was a lot of it, and it was streaming down the sides of the city as well. So it ended up around the city area. The military were actually called in. Interestingly enough, the temperature dropped associated with this cold front from 27 degrees Celsius to 16 in an hour.
Wow.
So that's major cold front activity. And look at this, it's a sea of ice, and you can see how high this ice, and it's been melted there. You can see it's now sort of a river along the road, up to 3 feet in places. So a lot of damage caused, and pretty much a very rare event. Yes, they do get severe thunderstorms here. Deep convection happens all the time, but something like this is absolutely, it's beyond. It's an extreme event. Do we put that down to climate change though, Aidan?
Well, some people are.
I think I would.
You would? Yeah. Okay, well, we'll find out, I guess. I guess someone will be looking into it. But these scenes actually remind me of the Ottery hailstorm from 2008. So we covered that in a previous Weather Studio Live. Yeah. Incredible hailstorm that we had in Ottery, St Mary in Devon just over 10 years ago in October. So
was it like 3 feet deep, the hail?
Well, in some places, yeah, because it drifted in Ottery.
Right.
Had scenes similar to that, actually.
It's quite scary, and particularly in the summer, you don't expect to see ice. Obviously, we do get hailstones in the summer months, but even so, that quantity really means that the air was very, very unstable, huge deep convection, and obviously quite, you'd fear for your lives if you saw that coming down. It just kept mounting up. Not only across in Central America, here in the UK and across Europe as well.
Yeah, you mentioned climate change. Normally you need hot air for hail like that, and we certainly saw a lot of hot air across parts of Europe last week. An incredible heat wave. Really, you cannot overstate how extraordinary this heat wave was. Now, first of all, we're always talking about heat waves in terms of temperatures right at the surface, where we measure the temperatures using thermometers in Stevenson screens, but someone I follow on Twitter, a scientist in Finland, he was looking at the temperatures at 5,000 feet, so recorded by weather balloons, sent up 5,000 feet or 1,500 meters, and found that they were record-breaking as well. We hadn't recorded those kinds of temperatures across France and other parts of Europe as well. And this map here shows where the heat at those levels, 1,500 meters, was concentrated across central and southern France, and then it extended into parts of the UK. And we send up a balloon a couple of times a day from Camborne in Cornwall, and that last week, around midnight between Thursday and Friday, recorded a temperature of 25 degrees, and this is at 1,500 metres.
That's unbelievable, really. Well, it is believable because we've got evidence of it, but even so, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, well, that's what the scientist from Finland is suggesting, is that he mapped or he drew a histogram of all the previous balloon ascents from Camborne and found that it had never been recorded before. We've not double-checked this at the Met Office, but it certainly looks plausible because that hot air was truly remarkable, and it just goes to show that across the UK, that hot air all the way from the Sahara was found at that level, 1,500 metres, and actually one of our deputy chiefs here at the Met Office has drawn a trajectory, he's run a computer model to find where that air at 1,500 metres above Camborne came from.
Right.
And that's what this map here shows. I'm not sure how much you can.
Can you go full screen? That's it.
Here we go. So we're looking at the map on the top left of the screen there, and it's taking it there from Cornwall, and it's running it backwards. So the line there, if you trace it back, you go back day by day. Each cross indicates a day, and you find that air came from Africa, North Africa, Algeria.
So that's the top left map there. And interestingly enough, more information, because if you look down at the bottom left, you can see what height this air was at as well.
Yeah, so looking at the far right of that graph at the bottom on the left, so the far right shows where that air ended up, about 1,500 metres above Camborne, but it came from much higher levels above the Sahara. So not only did it come from a hot place, but on its journey towards the UK, it descended through the atmosphere, and what's going on there is as it descends, there's higher pressure, so it gets compressed by the air above it, and when you compress air, it heats up. So there's a couple of things going on there to result in that 25 degrees at...
And interestingly enough, a lot of the trajectories actually go across the Pyrenees, and you can see that on this map here. So this is the Sahara, it's moving its way, well, eastwards and then northwards, and then it's forced upwards by the mountains of the Pyrenees, and then it descends again, and obviously it's like the Föhn effect. You get that when you have descending air, again you get compression, you get heat generated from that, and then it tracks across, being moderated by the cooler waters of the sea before it hits the West Country.
So effectively, if you fly a balloon last week above Camborne, you find this incredible heat from the Sahara at 1,500 metres, and it was that same hot air that broke records across much of Europe. Now, the question that we were asked at the beginning was, why didn't it break records in the UK? And the answer is this map here, top right. Because actually, in the lowest part of the atmosphere, where we all wander about, and where we record our surface temperature measurements, well, the air came from Iceland because we had a cool breeze coming in from the North Sea, and you can see where that air came from Iceland and then via the North Sea, and then it came into southern Britain. So the air at 1,500 metres was that record-breaking hot air from Sahara, but at lower levels it was significantly cooler. We had what we call an easterly undercut, an undercut of cooler air from the Sahara.
And this final chart actually says a lot about what the temperature is going to be, and it's a little bit more complex than maybe you imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the air essentially mixes at all these different levels, so it's not always as straightforward as draw an arrow from the Sahara, because that's where the winds are pointing from. We get this mixing of air at all levels, but certainly the air across much of Europe was this hot Saharan air at all levels, but across the UK at the lowest levels we had that North Sea undercut. Otherwise it would have been significantly...
And in fact, the chief was talking about that last week and saying, you know, you do look at the source of the air, but descending air and compression is a huge factor when it comes to local temperatures at the surface.
Yeah, and some of the highest temperatures last summer, if you trace the trajectories back, you don't find they came from North Africa or Spain. You find they came from Scandinavia or from Iceland, and they were just compressed under areas of high pressure. So it's not always as straightforward as it might look when you get these heat waves. But wow, across France though, it was extraordinary.
I mean, it was such an oppressive heat. People, you know, were really suffering from heat stress, weren't they? It wasn't a pleasant heat at all.
Thankfully, it didn't last as long as the heat wave of 2003, which was the previous time the French national record was broken. But it was more intense than that. It was a short burst, but more intense. And the WMO tweeted at the end of last week that not only did they break the record by almost 2 degrees in this location here, which possibly also holds the record for France's most difficult to pronounce place name, but at 12 other stations, they all exceeded that national record.
And interestingly, if you look at the topography of the area, it tells us a lot about why this part of the world will see such high temperatures. And the model was indicating that many days before. You've got the Alps to one side, and you've got the massive central to like the north, the west of it. And elevation here is around 6,000 feet. So it's almost like the setup for Death Valley, where you get almost like a convection going on like in an oven. You get the heat really circulating around and being trapped within this zone here. And that's why the temperatures there were so high.
Yeah, so quite extraordinary. You could say we had a lucky escape in the UK when you had a glancing blow and the hottest air was kept higher above the surface because of the breeze from the North Sea. But I suspect if it had lasted a day longer, well, it could be a different story.
Alex Deacon, the Weather Wall of Wisdom. What's going on? Are people talking to us?
People are talking to us a lot. Thank you very much for all your questions coming in. A few comments on the wardrobe. I'm guessing they're touching on your floral outfits, the pair of you. Lots of love. Lots of love for that. Philip Matthew Marley on YouTube asks a question, and we've had something similar as well from Paul Markman, both on YouTube. How do you forecast cloud amounts when we have high pressure dominant, as is suggested this week? That's from Paul. And Philip Matthew O'Malley on YouTube. Why is there so much cloud here in Ireland when it's high pressure in charge? Well, actually, the truth is with high pressure, you can get cloud trapped under it effectively, under the inversion, and it just sticks around. And it's one of the hardest things to predict actually when we've got high pressure is the actual cloud amount. So it is really quite tricky. It's one of the things the computer models do struggle with a little bit. And of course it does make such a difference, particularly at this time of year and also in winter, if you've got the cloud or not at night, in particular winter, as to whether you're going to get frost and just to the feel of the day. Because if it's cloudy with this kind of air mass, it feels cool, but any amount of sunshine and temperatures soon jump up. So it is particularly tricky. Shawnee Sheep on YouTube. Why is shower activity and thunderstorms least common near the coast? Well, it kind of is in the summer months, Shawnee Sheep on YouTube, because it's the heat, the land heats up faster than the sea. So actually you're more likely to get showers inland in the summer because the land heats up that much more quickly. Whereas in winter, the opposite is true, because often showers only form over the sea because the sea is warmer than the land, and then you get showers coming in and they hit the coast and then it dries up, and actually inland you don't get as many. So it depends on the wind direction, but that is one of the main reasons why you tend to get more thunderstorms inland. Thomas Hapgood on YouTube asks simply, will it rain soon? I'm not sure where you are, Thomas, but there's a lot of dry weather in the forecast, a lot of high pressure around at the moment. Andy Homewood on Facebook, why isn't our summer that great like it was last year? It seems up and down this year, and I mean that's an understatement. It has really been volatile this year. It is kind of similar reason to do with position of the jet stream. Last year the jet stream was just in a similar kind of stuck position, but we were on the warm and sunny side of it. This year we've been on the cool and wet side of it, and it just shifted a little bit, which is why we got the heat last week, and now it's kind of breaking up a little bit and it's not quite so clear cut. But we're only 1 month in. There's still 2 months left of summer, and things can change. Thanks for all your questions. Keep coming in, going through them as much as I can, but that's all for now.
Thanks very much, Alex. Now, Aidan will be talking about the jet stream in a minute because it is still in a block pattern, but there's other things going on as well. But let's cast our mind back to the week beginning of the 9th of June, and it was a very different setup, wasn't it? We hadn't really anticipated the heat wave at that point, although it wasn't actually officially a heat wave. But what we were looking at was some weather patterns which were coming in from the south and the southeast and producing a lot of rain. So much so, we saw so much persistent rain during the Tuesday and the Wednesday of that week, 100 millimetres in places in just 24 hours, that we saw some horrendous flooding across parts of the Lincolnshire Wold come the Friday and the Saturday. And this map really says it all. This is the rainfall map for June 2019, and you can really tell a lot from this. The blues representing where the wettest weather was, and it was across England and Wales because the weather systems were coming in from the south or southeast or southwest. It meant some dry conditions across the central and northern part of Scotland. However, interestingly enough, we go to the next map, you can see that we only had on average 2 or 3 days more rainfall than what we normally have during June. So the rain was persistent and at times heavy, but certainly it wasn't extraordinary, was it, as a month of rainy days?
No, and June was a funny month. We lurched from one extreme to the next. Remember, the first day of June was quite hot. The highest temperatures of the year so far were recorded on the 1st. It then turned much cooler. Then we had a few weeks of unsettled weather, and then that hot spell at the end of the month as well. So bookended by hot spells, but in the middle, that cool.
And actually, halfway through the month, there was talk about it sort of tending towards the wettest June on record, which was 2012. But luckily, then we saw sort of the heat build and the drier air come up from the near continent.
And because of those contrasts, the heat and then the cool weather and then the heat, we ended up somewhere in the middle, and it was about average for temperatures. So you can see there that there's some faint reds around the perimeter. But overall, the weather was about average for temperatures, but a wet month.
And we did have a blocking pattern then. It was an Omega block, which meant that the rain was persistent in a particular area, and that's why Scotland was drier. So, July records. We've been talking a lot about June records and the way that, some parts of the country did smash them through June. What's happening here?
How's your memory? Because these are all recent, actually. The hottest June day on record, hottest July on record, and the wettest July. They're all recent, though. They've all happened in the last 20 years. So you might remember these.
Right.
Hottest day, when do you think that was?
That was the 10th of June 2003, 38.5 degrees Celsius in Faversham.
No, that was August.
Oh.
Right. 10th of
I thought you. Oh, right. Okay.
August.
Oh, right. 10th of. Okay.
Hottest day in July.
In July. Well, the hottest July as in a month and as a day. Oh, I'd say that was probably 2006, 15.
Yeah.
My God,
that's 2006.
I've really failed already on this.
Okay. Let's give you the answers. Put you out with misery. This is the hottest July day on record.
Oh, okay.
Only a few years ago. I remember I was at the Norfolk show on that day. It was it was sweaty.
I can't remember where I was actually. But anyway, yes, I'm now reminded of that number.
I think I had to milk a cow. It was really unpleasant.
Oh, okay.
Hottest July.
2006. I was going to say that.
You got that right.
Yeah. Wettest July 2012.
2009. Yeah, I don't remember that.
No, I don't either.
Okay,
well, let's hope we don't get the wettest July on record, particularly after the wet weather we've seen in June.
Actually, the top two aren't currently looking likely either at the moment, but you never know what happens towards the end of the month.
Second of the month.
Yeah, this week is shaping up to be fairly average. We're back to somewhere in the middle. Pleasant summer weather out there for most of us.
So what's happening weather-wise for the first few days in July then?
Well, like I say, it's fairly pleasant standard summer weather, particularly if you're in the south of the UK. Further north, it's a different story. Northwest Scotland not faring very well this week. But let's put on some weather there and show you what's going on. Today's a day in which we started off with clear skies. We started off with 3 degrees in Wales this morning, and after that chilly start we saw plenty of sunshine. Now going through Tuesday night, it's another chilly night, 2 degrees possible in Northern Ireland, so single figures in the countryside. Towns and cities probably just about managing double figures overnight. But many places starting off dry on Wednesday, and then further north, well, across Scotland you can see a change on the way for the end of Wednesday. Areas of cloud move in. This area of cloud dangling across northern parts of Scotland, that's a warm front. And as that moves in, well, it's going to bring some persistent damp weather. Not raining all the time for northwest Scotland, but it certainly looks like the main area for rain.
Actually, in shelter towards the east, you're probably going to get some quite nice temperatures tomorrow.
Yeah, and further south, for much of England and Wales, it's a sunny day for Thursday, and for Northern Ireland, sunny spells. So really it's the northern half of Scotland where over the next couple of days it's going to be cloudy and there'll be rain at times. Around 30 to 50 millimetres of rainfall over some of the wetter peaks of Scotland. But temperatures are rising across southern parts of the UK over the next few days, and I suspect we'll be somewhere around 23 to 25 Celsius by Thursday in the southeast. Further north,
high teens.
High teens,
yeah.
But it's a static situation at the moment. We're keeping a lot of fine, dry, bright weather in the south. Further north, cloudier, and that rain coming and going across northwest Scotland. And this is where the uncertainties start to arise.
Right. Okay.
Because on Friday, a cold front, you can see it there, introducing a bit more persistent rain into the north of Scotland on Friday. And it's the behaviour of that cold front. We'll talk about it more in a moment, how that will determine the temperature in particular for the weekend. So yeah.
Interesting. We are going to talk about the Mediterranean forecast as well, but before that, let's throw over to Mr. Deacon, who probably has more comments and questions.
Yeah, lots of stuff coming in. Back to high pressure. Rohan Flyer on YouTube. It's in high pressure. Can rain come? Well, most of the time in high pressure, the reason its pressure is high is because the air is descending through it. And to get rain, you kind of need ascent. You need the air to be going up. That's why it rains much more with low pressure. You can get rain and mostly drizzle, light rain with high pressure if the air is forced up over hills and mountains, particularly in winter when it's just cooler, more dense air and you get drizzly stuff. But yeah, tend not to get much rain in the middle of high pressure because that's what makes it high. The air is descending through the atmosphere. Steve Buck Rogers on Periscope. What's the average rainfall totals for the year so far? I'm not sure about that, Steve Buck Rogers, but if you follow us on social media, every month we publish the stats for the month. So we've just published a blog about the June statistics, and if you follow us and go to our website, you can get the stats for each month so far, and we often talk about the monthly stats on here as well. But it'd be interesting to see actually 6 months in where we're at with the halfway stage. Maybe we'll ask our statistics expert Mark McCarthy next week about that one, but that's a good question. Daniel on YouTube, do showers occur in random patterns or are they more likely to be in lines? Well, that does depend on the atmospheric situation. Often we get bands of showers. Sometimes we call a weakening old front a band of showers, and it's not technically a band of showers, but it kind of gives the impression of showers because the rain kind of comes and goes a little bit, so they're not technically showers, but that can be one form. You can get troughs where, yes, the air is kind of unstable just in a line, so you get a band of showers that way. But often showers just inherent in the air mass, in a broader air mass, and so you just do get them tend to be random. So yeah, showers can kind of come in all shapes and sizes. Omega on YouTube, why does my old analog barometer get the weather correct every single time, and yet we use supercomputers to predict and they seem to fail most of the time? Well, Omega, I'd love to see your barometer. It's probably worth an awful lot of money. It must be worth millions of pounds. If you've got a barometer that gets the weather correct every single time, well, that would be phenomenal to see that. And is it normal for the Jetstream to be so abnormal at this time of year? Well, as we often say, and there's a lot of research going on into the position of the Jetstream, because we try and predict it as best we can and predict the longer range trends in it because it does dictate our weather. I don't think there's been anything too unusual about it, but it's just been in a stuck position, and there's nothing too unusual about that this time of year. We've just been at different sides of it at different times. That's why the weather has been so extreme. Why does the weather differ so drastically in Scotland and England despite being right next to each other? Well, it is just that north-south split, and it can be, in the south of France it was very different to it was in the south of England, as we've been discussed. So it's just that change. It keeps us all in a job, doesn't it? It keeps us on our toes, that variance of weather across the nation.
Gives us something to talk about for 30 minutes
the 7 troughs that we saw sort of really crowning the northern hemisphere last week, indicative of the weather that we saw last year with a very blocked pattern and obviously the heat wave across much of Europe. What we're seeing today across the upper echelons of the atmosphere.
Yeah, the Jetstream hasn't changed a huge amount this summer, but we've been on slightly different sides of it at different times, and we've talked a fair amount about this Omega block, and what you can see here is something like an Omega block. It dips there, then it rises, and then it dips again, and when you get this kind of pattern here, then weather patterns become slow moving. They're not carried rapidly across the Atlantic, giving us changeable weather. They get stuck in the same place, whether it's hot air or whether it's rainfall. And we've seen both of those over the last month or so. Now, we've still got this Omega block, you can see, across the Atlantic. And what will happen if I put on the temperatures is that will introduce some warmer and more humid air once again across western parts of Europe. So it's similar, it's not identical, but it's similar to what we saw last week with this jet stream, or this slice of the jet stream just to the west of Iberia, drawing up heat then across Spain into Andorra and France. And that then will start to affect southern parts of UK over the next few days. Now, in the meantime, another portion of the jet stream isn't so blocked, and if we rewind to the beginning, and then you can see up towards Greenland, the jet stream in more of a straight line position. So there are these two jet streams that are moving across the Atlantic, giving quite different weather. And it's this portion of the jet stream which will be more influential to northern parts of Britain. Watch as it picks up this area of low pressure and pushes it towards Iceland. And then that low pressure starts to affect Scotland. And these weather fronts dangling beneath it will affect Scotland. That's what's giving the rainfall across northern parts of Scotland over the next few days. But we're watching this cold front carefully as it moves south across the UK through the weekend, because the big question mark, effectively, by this stage is how much that cold front will clear the UK and how much it will clear that heat that I mentioned coming up from the south into Saturday and Sunday. So we've got two portions of the jet stream behaving in slightly different ways, one more blocked than the other, one bringing these weather systems through and one keeping them stuck where they are, and they're battling over the weekend. And the main difference it makes to our weather is how warm it will be on Saturday and Sunday in the south and whether we get thunderstorms. So we're going to be talking more about that in a moment.
There's another battle going on, isn't there?
There is.
And that's the battle between USA versus the English football team in Lyon tonight. And obviously we've just seen those reds across France and Spain. And where's Lyon in the greater scheme of things?
It's around there, isn't it?
Yes. So good luck to them tonight. The temperature, what do you think the temperature is going to be tonight? 27 degrees Celsius for the Women's World Cup semi-final. Not
as hot as it was last week, but still pretty toasty there. Wouldn't like to be playing football in that kind of heat, but yeah.
So good luck to our girls who are, battling against the USA girls this evening at 8 p.m. And you can see where the heat is. In fact, there's a real marked contrast between the fresher conditions, as Aidan talked about, associated with the cold front just to the north there, and the warmer, the hotter air, which is covering much of the Mediterranean and southern parts of France, as well as Spain. There are heat stress warnings out still across these parts of the country. Temperatures 5 to 10 degrees above average, and particularly by night, very uncomfortable nights expected right the way through the week as temperatures dip down no lower than around 20 degrees Celsius. The other aspect of it, and we've been talking about that at the beginning of the programme, is the deep convection. Not only associated with this cold front here, but also just in situ convection, causing some thunderstorms. And there are some impacts expected with that, particularly today, tomorrow, and then again on Sunday. And that's for thunderstorms, flash flooding, the risk, obviously, of hail, thunder and lightning. So a lot going on. But if you are flying down to the Mediterranean, there's a lot of fine weather as well, isn't there, Aidan? I mean, that's where the cold front is. That's where the showers are, in situ showers. But then further south, southern parts of Italy, Greece and Turkey doing very well if you like that hot air.
I mean, we're into the time of year when effectively you're guaranteed hot sunshine for most of the time in the Mediterranean. Someone asked a question about Dubrovnik. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and actually the temperatures were ideal. They were low 30s, but I know it's got a lot hotter there. Something a bit cooler over the next few days for Dubrovnik.
And interestingly, look at that there. That could affect the UK as well. There's something brewing through the weekend across France as well as Spain.
This is Sunday, and across southern parts of the UK there, you can see some thunderstorms. But a word of caution, because this is just one computer model, and I'm going to be looking at the difference between the different computer models now, because the main uncertainty through the weekend is how much the cold front that I mentioned will clear to the south. And as is always the case when we look this far ahead using computer models, we don't just go with one computer model, because by this stage they start to diverge, they start to say different things, and we look at the weight of probability for different outcomes. Now, this is one computer model solution, and basically it represents what's shown here is something called the thickness of the atmosphere, and it's used as a proxy for temperature. So effectively, the higher the temperature, the thicker a layer of atmosphere, right? And basically, all we're interested here is the colours. So we've got cooler air in the north of the UK, hotter air to the south across France there. You can see the colour gradient. Now, this is one computer model, and it has the cold front across Scotland, okay? And this is midnight on Saturday. Now, another computer model, watch the colour change. Boom. The cold front is across northern France.
Which one's that then? What computer model?
So the first one was the UK Met Office model, and the next one is the European model. So the European model has the cold front clearing the UK and taking all the heat across France with it, okay? Now, going back to the UK model, and you can see that hotter air across northern France extending into southern Britain. What that would give us on Saturday is temperatures into the high 20s, so 29 in a few spots. What the other computer model would give us, temperatures around average, what we've got this week, basically low to mid 20s. So not a huge amount of difference. And when we're talking about the weather, right, most of the UK, most of the weekend is just going to be dry. There'll be a bit more cloud in the sky. There'll be some sunshine. There'll be a few showers. So it's not going to make a massive difference in terms of the weather, but it will make a difference in temperatures in the south, whether we clear that heat or not. Now, what we're thinking at the moment is that the European model has more support from other models, so other models agree with it more, so that's more likely. But if the UK model came through, not only would we see those higher temperatures, but this is another map from the UK model Saturday night showing some showers and thunderstorms affecting southern parts of Britain. So that's another thing to consider. If we do hang on to those higher temperatures, there's the chance that southern areas could see some showers and thunderstorms developing as well, whilst the same weather for the European model just shows that it wouldn't be quite as showery, it would be just dry, a bit quieter.
So the trends are for the weekend, at the moment it's looking currently mostly dry, temperatures around average or above average, but so it's not looking particularly cool away from central and northern areas of Scotland. So not a bad weekend, it's not a washout, lots of things going on this weekend. Yeah. Alex, any more comments and questions?
Yeah, we've had a few more comments and questions, some really good ones. Thank you for these, kept coming in throughout the show. Christopher Conroy on YouTube, is it normal for temperatures to be in single figures? Just 3 Celsius this morning in early July? No, that was pretty unusual, it was a pretty chilly morning to say the least. Could we ever manipulate the jet stream? I think that would be pretty tricky with some parts of the world try and manipulate clouds, and that's already hard enough, but yeah, to get up there and manipulate the jet stream, that would be fairly tricky. I don't know why you're bothering all those different computer models. We just need Omega's barometer. That's all we need to know what the weather's doing on Saturday. Could you let us know, Omega, what your barometer says?
I think it's current conditions, to be honest.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Staying in the UK for school summer holidays this year, where and when we have the best weather? Well, summer holidays starting, of course, this week. Parts of Scotland breaking up. So, yeah, the Met Office will be the first to let you know. Tomorrow we'll have the 10-day trend. That'll cover much of next week, so we'll have a flavour of that. So, yes, make sure you stay tuned. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you get an alert to know that's come up, and we'll also post that on Facebook tomorrow as well. And finally, one really good question from Caleb, the weather dude on Facebook. When is aphelion this year, when the sun is furthest from the sun? It's actually, I just looked it up, it's on the 4th of July. So the sun is,
that's good.
We are furthest from the sun this week on...
Thank you for that.
2 days time.
2 days time, so Thursday. So yeah, it seems a bit weird that we're furthest from the sun during summer, but that's what happens. And it's more to do with the tilt, about the seasons, rather than actually the actual difference it makes being further from the sun. Doesn't have that much impact on the temperature.
The Mostly Weather podcast is out, and this week it's about what pilots see at 40,000 feet, the best weather and the worst weather, taking off and landing in fog. What happens when your plane is struck by lightning? It's a very good one, actually, very interesting.
I'll listen to that.
Weather Snap obviously out on Thursday with all your world weather news and UK weather news, and the 10-day trend. Who's doing it this week, boys?
Mr. McGee.
Mr. McGee is doing the 10-day trend.
Oh, no, I'm doing it. Yeah, what am I on about? Yeah, it's me.
Pass the
Sorry.
Okay.
I did it last week, that was why, but no.
Still recovering from the 7-minute
It was a bit of an epic last week, wasn't it? Yeah. But it was bang on. I tell you, it was bang on.
Well done.
I didn't get to the end.
Excellent work, boys.
Ran out of data allowance.
Now, we normally have a gong. It's sort of a virtual gong around 1:30 to say you've got to stop talking now. It's 1:33. It's time to shut up.
This has been a bit of an epic.
Yeah, it has been an epic.
Thank you very much for watching. See you next week.
Bye.